Hello, everybody. I am His Royal Highness Emperor Dr. Stuart Allen Swordlow.
And I am the maid, Janet Diane Moya Swordlow.
Speaking, there's a dust bowl under my bed. If you would please clean it. Anyway, this is the Expansions News podcast for the beginning of the second week of April 2018. Of course, it is almost the second week of April, but it's like January outside.
It's very cold.
Way below freezing, snow every other day, and it's been...
But blue skies today.
It's just, tomorrow's snow.
Mm-hmm. Was that why you wore royal blue? Because it's like a light blue sky?
I wear what I wear to make a statement without saying anything.
To program and trigger people?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I am the emperor of the universe.
Of your own universe.
Of all.
Of Stuartland.
Of all universes.
Of Stuartland in all universes.
Well, when my people come, you're going to be sorry. Anyway, back to this.
You will let me clean
Earth.
up after them, I hope.
That's your job. Anyway, the United States and North Korea have been holding secret direct talks to prepare for a summit between President Donald Trump and North Korea leader Kim Jong-un. And Central Intelligence Agency Director Mike Pompeo, sounds like Pompeii volcano, and a team at the CIA have been working through intelligence back channels, American intelligence, that's an oxymoron, to make preparations for the summit. And American and North Korean intelligence officials have spoken several times and even met in a third country. Now, we all know it's Sweden. Why do they have to say a third country like it's a mysterious look? We all know it's freaking Sweden because the North Korean delegation went to Sweden conspicuously. Everybody knows they were there.
Yeah, but it's a secret, so it's like it's not too
It's
secret
like,
if it's on the news.
It's secret if you're like brain dead people like the ones that are mostly out there. Anyway, North Korea has acknowledged Trump's acceptance and has reaffirmed that Kim is willing to discuss the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. The North Koreans are pushing to having the meeting in their capital, Pyongyang. Do you think that Trump should go to Pyongyang?
You just want to say the word.
It could be Trump and Melania in Pyongyang. It could be a reality show. But here's the interesting part that I'm getting to. They've also raised the possibility that they would meet in the Mongolian capital of Ulaanbaatar. Now, where have I discussed that with you before? Many years ago, 4 years ago, when I did my documentary in Japan and about the royal family in Japan, I told you that the Japanese royal family is really originated in North Korea, and that every year, I was told by the Japanese, they meet in Mongolia.
Here they go.
So here we are. The truth is now starting to come out. And as recently as this weekend, Trump told associates he was looking forward to the summit, probably because they would have he thinks they're going to have sushi. He doesn't understand that Korea doesn't have sushi.
They have good food.
Yeah. And he agreed on the spot when he was presented with the invitation from Kim. Officials said the current target is late May or June. So that means our trip, we could be free of nuclear attack because they'll be talking. Trump is due to meet in 2 weeks. Now here's the interesting thing. Who's he meeting with? Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Because that's his royal family. And Abe is expected to come bearing a list of concerns about the talk. Not concerns. He's like, we want our royal family from North Korea to join with Japan. That's what this is about. Speaking of Mr. Trump again, he has ordered the deployment of thousands of National Guard troops to the U.S. border with Mexico. But you want to hear something humorous? Because there's a video online of a Mexican migrant hopping the border wall this past week. He had 3 other men helping him to give him a boost over the wall. And the man jumped the rusty metal barrier that separates Ciudad Juarez, which we were at that place, from Sunland Park, New Mexico. Although we were in El Paso
The
part.
thing is, they can just drive across.
You could just go back and forth. It's
Right,
like
there's
no
no
big
wall.
deal. There's no wall. It's like that's just it was a show.
A lot of people,
Wait.
people said these.
He then ran off to avoid being spotted by U.S. Customs and Border. He's on video, but he ran off not to be observed. Seriously, this is all a show, people. And you understand this is a big show. And the other, I think, funny thing is Trump had a flurry of furious tweets when he saw the reports of the caravan. You know, there's a caravan of 1,000 Central American migrants coming to the Mexican border of the United States because they're going to go across. He ordered 2,000 to 4,000 National Guardsmen to the border, and which was a very strong, bitter reaction from Mexico. He did this, and this guy just jumped across the wall and,
That's what I said.
and
They
kept
can
going.
drive. They can drive across.
You could just drive across. Listen to me.
Or they can wade across the
you
Rio
are,
Grande.
When you are in El Paso, you go like this, and you're in Mexico. Okay.
Well, it's the same thing with the river. They can just walk across the Rio Grande and get into one country or the other.
Exactly. And but the activists who organized the migrant caravan have announced they will no longer be reaching the border en masse because many of the individual migrants and families have begun to go their own way. In other words, they're dispersing so no one knows where any one of them is going. And there is a shelter for the migrants in Ciudad Juarez, a Catholic priest who runs it. He says 5 migrants who were part of the caravan arrived last week, but they're already gone across the United States.
Because it's not, like I said, you can drive across the border. It's
I
not
mean,
difficult.
seriously, this is such a joke. And you know, we were, especially at the Texas part of the border, it's not possible to build a wall. It's not possible to build a wall.
And I just have a quick addition to that story, because I also had mentioned that apparently it said in Texas, I guess, that Rick Perry ordered 1,000 armed guard troops to the Rio Grande Valley in one of his last major acts as Texas governor.
Yeah, they probably had a beer party while they were there.
And apparently they were supposed to come back in March.
Come back from where?
Come
the border?
back, yeah, from the border, from Texas. But instead, they're going to be staying there indefinitely.
Right.
So 1,000 armed guard troops now.
Okay, let me just say something. All those 1,000 guard troops, they're all Mexicans anyway, and that's all their cousins coming up. They're gonna like, hi, bienvenidos.
So that's why I said it's just something to defocus
It's
you.
so ridiculous, honestly.
Yes, so that you think about that instead of other things that are more important.
Now, for a serious thing that happened here in the U.S., that there was a 4.6 magnitude earthquake this yesterday in Oklahoma, and it was felt in Kansas City, Missouri, Joplin, Missouri. We were in Joplin, and in Wichita, Kansas.
Oh, I've been in Oklahoma City too.
Yeah,
I've been
so have
everywhere.
I. And now here's the thing: they're blaming this on the fluid injection of fracking, but that's not true because, as you know, I just came back from Houston and I met with very big oil men, and they were big,
They were bigger than you. I saw the picture.
Yeah, they're gigantic people.
Yeah, they made you look like
They're from the giant times of the earth. Anyway, they taught me about fracking, and I learned about how it's been going on for 70 plus years, and there's never been an earthquake from it, ever. So this is a bunch of BS stories.
It's marketing to get you frightened, right?
Yes, but the interesting thing about this earthquake in Oklahoma is that on the same day, there was a snowstorm in Oklahoma here in April. So an earthquake and a snowstorm, and then they said, and next week it's going to be in the 80s in Oklahoma. So they tweeted, Oklahoma, you all right? What's going on down there? Next thing there'll be tornadoes. You'll see. It is tornado season.
It could be.
Yeah. But I also spoke with a NASA physicist who confirmed that the ice age is coming. And he has a big screen in front of him. He watches the flows of everything, and he confirmed to me. He also confirmed a lot of things about Montauk Project, which I will discuss at another time here. Also, what we learned, and I have told you for a long time, oil is not fossil fuel. There's no such thing. It's a regenerative flow and liquid from the earth. Oil fields that have been left empty for decades suddenly refill. So unless there was a mini explosion of dinosaurs who died and made oil again, it is not fossil fuel. Speaking of Earth issues, in Africa, an enormous crack spanning miles opened up in the earth outside Nairobi, Kenya. And this was not a plumber with his pants lower down. Okay, it's a 50-foot deep crevice that sliced through major highways and measured up to 50 feet deep, 65 feet across at its widest point. And here's the funny part. They said scientists can't come to a conclusion about the natural phenomenon and how it occurred. So my translation is, they can't figure out a good cover story. So geologist Ben Andrews believes the crack is the result of tectonic plates shifting, which is true. And he said, but here's the thing. He's one of the Illuminati agents, because we're seeing a crack that in all likelihood formed over many thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years. No, it happened over freaking night. Okay, it was not there the day before, and the next day it was there. So no, it did not happen over many thousands of years. And he said that this is an evidence that part of Africa will break off the continent in 50 million years. Hello, it's happening now. Maybe in 50 hours, not 50 million years. Please, get a new writer.
I wonder if they're going to do a follow-up on this story.
Well, it gets better, because earthquake geologist Wendy Bohom disagrees. Now, she's not too bright either. She says while she does believe that Africa will split into two in the future, the crevice was caused by weather. I think it's an earth fissure, she said, the same sort of thing you see in Arizona after heavy rainstorms. They're the result of heavier torrential rains that come and wash away large portions of the dirt. No, Wendy, because guess what? There's a drought in Africa. There was no rain. And Arizona does not develop such fissures overnight at all.
50 feet deep is pretty deep.
Yeah, no, she's full of crap too. And she could not explain, however, how the crevice formed overnight.
She didn't say it was raining,
because she's full of crap. But part of Africa, this is part of the African Rift, which if you look at a map, it goes right through the eastern part from South Africa all the way up through Egypt and into the Middle East, and even goes through Jerusalem. And this African Rift fault line is what caused the Dead Sea to develop. It caused the Jordan River to be formed. It also has formed the volcano, which is in the process of exploding in the Congo. And there's also a volcano in the Red Sea, which is... So no, this was not to do with weather. It has to do with Africa splitting up. In alignment with this, there was a magnitude 5.3 earthquake in Southern California, which shook the region, including downtown Los Angeles. The strongest earthquake to shake Southern California since the magnitude 4.4 struck in 2014. And it was located 86 miles west of Los Angeles at a depth of 6 miles. There was no tsunami threat. Thousands of people reported the shaking across Southern California. Of course, it could have been their own tremors from cocaine and other things that they've been taking. However, this is just the beginning, because this was centered near the Channel Islands, where the government has abandoned undersea bases for the last couple of years. And it's also near the continental shelf that shows that California is on stilts and about to collapse. I have other information, but I'll wait till you are done with yours.
Well, I was also going to tell you, I don't know if you saw that piece where there was an earthquake up in Alaska, and then they issued a tsunami alert for the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, but you know that Alaska is like they have earthquakes every 10 minutes.
But this was, according to them, a big tsunami alert.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And you know, it's just about a year ago, or was it 2 years, we had the earthquake right here in Michigan.
Well, we have one every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, now international news first. China telling Russia that we've come to support you against the U.S.
That's not news.
It's not? Then
It's
should I
happened
not
all the
record
time.
it?
That's the old news.
Well, this according to
That's
this
since
is
the 50s.
no, this is new news according to this one because this happened just last week in Moscow at Moscow International Security Conference.
Really? I was not invited.
Well, it's new news. I think according to this, apparently the newly appointed Chinese Defense Minister Wei Feng attended the 7th Moscow International Security Conference accompanied by a delegation of other high-level military officials, and they emphasized that the trip was directly coordinated with Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Hey, what's your language?
He said he was going to Russia for two reasons. One, as a new defense minister of China, to show the world a high level of development of our bilateral relations and firm determination of our armed forces to strengthen strategic cooperation. And also, he said, the second was to support the Russian side in organizing the Moscow International Security Conference, showing the Americans the close ties between the armed forces of China and Russia. And he said, we have come to support you.
Yeah, but they've done that since the 1950s.
Apparently they're doing new things. They said in addition to boosting its own military power in Europe and Asia, the U.S. has portrayed growing Russian and Chinese influence abroad as an assault on democracy.
No, because the Americans aren't doing that.
The West has singled out Russia especially, accusing it of interfering, of course, in our past election and other foreign elections.
Right.
And then Washington also charged Moscow with being behind the cyber attacks and physical
course.
attacks, including the poisoning of ex-Soviet intelligence officers.
So if you get a
Israel.
headache, the Russians did it.
Yeah. Anyway, Russia then suggested that the U.S. or the U.K. may be the true culprit behind the attack against Skripal.
It's the UK did it. Like I mentioned, I think last week, there's no way that the Russians could have smuggled in that kind of poison into the UK without being noticed. The UK did it themselves.
The Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Grushko said that the Skripal affair was used in order to tighten the ranks of the European Union and NATO, which loosened lately, and to inject another portion of Russian phobia.
Right, that's like a disease now. Russian phobia.
Yeah, and then I didn't know if you knew this or not, but did you know that in September that there were joint Chinese and Russian military training exercises that was reported in December? And apparently it was between China and the Russian Federation National Guard, and they're claiming that these were war games which were practicing a full-scale invasion of Europe.
Oh,
That's
please.
what they're claiming.
Who's
They're
claiming?
saying the intelligence agencies.
Yo, there is no such thing as intelligence in the
They
Western
said
world.
two leading intelligence agencies reported this. It was called the Zapad or West exercises were revealed by these leading
Right.
analysts about from these two, it says leading intelligence agencies. They said at the time that Putin claimed the exercises were for anti-terror purposes and were purely defensive. However, the report of this intel paper says that the drills were a dry run for a shock campaign against Western Europe.
Why would they
NATO.
do? Because that would start a nuclear war in 3 seconds that nobody would win.
They claim
Why would they do that?
that they practiced overrunning the Suwalki Gap, which is a 60-mile stretch of NATO land connecting Kaliningrad with Belarus.
Belarus.
And then
Yeah.
it said that over 2 days, Russian fighter jets flew mock sorties through the Baltic and North Seas, swooping down onto the edges of Germany and the Netherlands.
Okay, so when the U.S. sends Air Force jets on missions or reconnaissance missions near Cuba, are they going to invade Cuba? Is that what it
They don't
means?
tell me, so I don't know.
Right.
I'm just telling you what the intelligence papers reported. They said that they were designed to be a practice run for destroying high-value targets such as power reactors, airports, other forces, including naval battalions. They practiced invading neutral Finland
Finland is not neutral.
as well as Sweden, Norway, and Poland.
There would be no sense of that.
I'm just telling you what they reported.
This is just fear-mongering, war-mongering, and Western stupidity.
It says that General Peter Pavel, head of NATO's military committee, warned in September, altogether what we see is a serious preparation for big war. That's what they're saying. And whether it's fear-mongering or not, that's what people are being
No,
told.
because I see in your notes, if I may, that they want to invade Poland, Lithuania, and Ukraine. May I say something? Now, this is on the news daily now, that Hungary, Poland, Czech Republic, Romania, Bulgaria, they are supporting Russia. They would prefer Russia. They hate the EU, and they don't want anything to do with the EU. So there's no reason to invade these countries because they don't want to be part of the West anyway.
I know, but do you remember I reported, I think last fall, about all the troops that moved into Poland?
Yeah, U.S. troops.
Yes, U.S. troops.
They are the ones who are instigating, not the Russians.
Yeah. So my point being is still, there's a lot of fear-mongering going on because they want people afraid. And they want to divide the countries. And they want the people in the U.S. to think that Russia and China are stronger than they are. Because it's all mind games. It's all mental games with the populations. So, with that said, I wanted to follow up on something that we kind of broached on last week, which was Pope Francis.
We broached something?
We broached on it.
No wonder I was in pain.
Yes, because the Pope, we had talked about this, that somebody had said, did the Pope say there was no hell?
Right.
Okay, so when I was doing my research after our show, I was reading here that apparently what happened was that Pope Francis happens to speak to Italy's paper called Repubblica, and the founder of Repubblica, which is Eugenio Scalfari, who is a 93-year-old devout atheist.
Right, I know that.
Okay, so he's speaking to this man. He's 93 years old. He's a devout atheist.
He's
right?
a devout atheist.
Right, a devout atheist. And he says he gives him a report about once a year, and this man, the devout atheist, does not take notes. But yet the Pope continues to give him the interviews and doesn't make him take notes, right? So every time a Francis interview has appeared on the Republica's front page, the Vatican Press Office insists that the words attributed to the Pope weren't necessarily reported accurately. This is 5 times now, without denying them outright or explaining what he meant. So then now people are saying, why does the Pope continue to speak to this man and allow himself to be quoted? So I think that's a good point when we think about what did the Pope say, what did the Pope not say. Okay? And speaking of the Pope and end times and programming. Now I don't know if you know or not have heard, but there is a new movie out about Mary Magdalene.
Yes, I heard.
Okay. So it has already been released in Europe and I think Australia, if I remember, but not here in the U.S. because of the Weinstein thing. Harvey Weinstein, his company had the distribution rights, and because of all that stuff, that's not been released, and we don't have a release date in the U.S.
Right.
But usually these things, as I've told you before, come out around Easter. And in this article, believe it or not, I think they're reading your stuff or attending our seminars because
Of course they are.
they're reporting here what you told our classes 2 or 3 years ago.
Which is what?
This is that Mary Magdalene was not a prostitute, but a
Right.
devoted disciple who supported Jesus financially and spiritually. Scholars are now reanalyzing the reputation and saying that she was probably a woman of greater social status,
Right.
higher social status, a woman of wealth who
She
accompanied
financed
Jesus.
his entire campaign.
And we talked about that in our classes. Anyway, it said if there's a feminist figure from the Bible for the Me Too era, notice how things are planned out, it could very well be Mary Magdalene.
No, she would never support that. She would think it was stupid.
The major character in the life of Jesus, long maligned in the West, portrayed as a reformed former prostitute, but now scholars are saying something totally different. Now, in addition to this movie, Pope Francis decided to declare a major feast day in her honor on July 22nd.
Except it's that's her birthday anyway.
It used to be a memorial, but now he's calling it a feast. And this elevates her.
But it was always a feast.
No, it was just a memorial. Now it's a feast, according because I looked it up in the Catholic news. Okay, now they're saying that instead of just being like a lowly woman, that she's on par with the male apostles because the apostles all have a feast day.
And that's
apparently.
what Jesus said.
So I thought that was interesting, and now what's even more
And
interesting
all the apostles were jealous of her.
is that Cardinal Gianfranco Ravasi, the Vatican's culture minister, actually says that Mary Magdalene's reputation was sullied by her depiction in art over the centuries. Art, listen to this, because they're putting stuff out there. Art history made her become a prostitute, which is something not present in the Gospels, and he also says she's been portrayed as Jesus' wife.
Listen to me, that's a little bit of a cover story because she was portrayed as a prostitute at the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD when they changed the entire New Testament to suit their purposes.
But they're changing it again. That's my
No,
point.
but he's lying. That's not how it happened.
I understand that, but I'm saying that they are now changing their story, and not only that, but they are saying officially that she's been portrayed as Jesus' wife. She's not. They're
Because
not saying
she was.
They're not saying she was, but they're putting this idea out in people's minds.
Because they called him rabbi in the Bible, and in those days, every rabbi had to be married. There was no such thing as a single rabbi.
I think you've mentioned that before in our classes. So apparently this Vatican culture minister went on to say it is important to find the real face of Mary Magdalene, who is a woman who represents the importance of the female aspect on the side of Christ. So in my opinion, they are preparing again New World religion, where you're going to have a male and a female together versus just a male.
Correct.
And then he goes on to talk about the Gospel of Mary, which I believe you've read that. An early
Many
Christian
times.
text depicted her as a visionary who received secret revelations and knowledge from Jesus. So I think that was, and then the last part of this article, which was very interesting to me, was that Mary Magdalene plays a critical role in the New Testament, carries an essential pivotal message of Christianity. All this is new. Why is a woman there giving testimony to that in a culture where women are just not paid attention to or not placed as witnesses? Well, this speaks very strongly to women today that the power of their witness, the power of their testimony to speak up for truth can have effects that ripple down through the centuries. So I thought that was very fascinating that now the Vatican is actually addressing this and bringing it forward into the public realm. Now, speaking of Montauk, I also have a Montauk story, which I find interesting. And this is, of course, most people by now, of course, have heard of the story Stranger Things, and they claim that they stole, there have been a lot of claims that they stole this storyline
And they
from other
did.
people. So the creators, Matt and Ross Duffer, are now accused in a new lawsuit by a man named Charlie Kessler, who explains that he made a short film called Montauk about government experiments, and his film premiered in 2012. It won an award at the Hamptons International Film Festival. Then he claims that he pitched the idea to the Duffer Brothers in 2014 and originally sold it to them, or gave it to them, I guess, his idea called the Montauk Project. Now then the Duffers sold Stranger Things to Netflix in 2015 under the Montauk title. Now what was interesting in this specific article is they refer to the fact that both the Montauk, this Charlie Kessler's claim, and Stranger Things came after a 1992 book called The Montauk Project Experiments in Time. Have you heard of that by chance?
I'm in it.
That's right. And in this book, which was published by Sky Books in 1992,
I remember.
The Montauk Project Experiments in Time, get that book and read it. It tells about Stewart, and here they talk about him as Stan Campbell. That was the alias they wrote about him under in 2 or 3 books, I believe.
Yeah, well, then
remember?
eventually they used my real name, and then I wrote my own.
Right,
story.
Montauk Alien Connection. So, Sky Books brought this story out in 1992, a long time ago before anybody else touched it.
And you know what? They stole my stories about my life and my experiences.
Yes.
And not only them, but so did the History Channel.
Yes, so if you want the truth, you read Sky Books' 1992 book called The Montauk Project, Experiments in Time, and then Stan Campbell was Stewart when Stewart came out with his book, Montauk Alien Connection, his life story. So whoever is claiming all kinds of things about Stranger Things goes back to Sky Books' 1992 book, The Montauk Project, Experiments in Time. Read that book.
And by the way, and I'll mention it again later, but I just filmed a documentary of my own about what happened to me.
Yes, so we have a lot of things coming up as always. Now, speaking about mind control, there is a new mind reading machine that can translate your thoughts and display them as text instantly.
Ooh, I wouldn't want that one.
And that's right, because people are concerned what might be displayed. But the interesting thing, which we've talked about
Bet you're
before,
going to stick one under my pillow.
sometimes we, like on our computers, we don't do anything that we may be thinking about. Next thing it shows up on our computer.
That's the truth.
So very
That's the truth.
things. So I think, of course, it already exists. But the point of this machine supposedly is to help people who can't speak And the researchers claim that it has an accuracy rate of 90% or more, and says that it works by interpreting consonants and vowels in our brain. It was developed at the University of California and explained in the Journal of Neural Engineering.
And I wrote about this and did a video of my mind control information many years ago. It's called Mind Transfer System, and every word in every language has a frequency that can be translated into a word physically and vice versa. And that's what this is that they're finally admitting. Everything I've ever told you is now in the news.
Yes. And of course, again, speaking about mind control and programming traps, two buzzwords going around, not only racism, but veganism, and now the two of them have been combined.
I think that vegans are
veganism.
Whatever. They are mentally ill.
Anyway, a Columbia instructor is giving a course that explains how veganism, which is the refusal to eat animal and dairy, can help, quote, resist the violence associated with the subjugation and oppression of non-white groups. Just putting the both of them together.
Oh, how ridiculous.
Yeah. He said, according to his LinkedIn profile, which identifies him as a social justice advocate.
Right, how about a moron?
He teaches a graduate course at Columbia called Pop, Power, Oppression, and Privilege.
At what university?
Columbia.
And they pay him to do that?
Apparently. He teaches about speciesism. So speciesism is a popular term with animal rights advocates that signifies interspecies discrimination and bigotry.
Okay, this is just absolutely
It's very ridiculous because, as we told you before, plants and everything have thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not just animals. So in other words, you can't eat anything other
so
than
if you're
light.
a vegan, I'm going to
I think it's a vegan, honey.
Vegan, then you're committing a crime against vegetables.
Yes, exactly. So it's all about mind control and programming. So pay attention. And speaking of which, by the time that we were born,
I was never born. I just popped into existence.
Our mothers were programmed not to feed, not to breastfeed. Now it's gone to the opposite extreme. And in the UK, someone sent me this article saying that they're no longer going to provide formula milk in its maternity units to women who decide not to breastfeed. And so those who can't, for whatever reason, not every woman can for whatever reason, they're saying this, if you want to artificially feed your baby, and making these women feel bad. So it's from flip-flopping all over the place. All over the place. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting article.
I support breastfeeding for everybody.
I bet you do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, now, we have talked about the beehive, and that people symbolize as the breast. And we have Remus and Romulus drinking from the
wolf.
The wolf. And then, which was interesting, we just watched the new, Star Wars movie?
Yes.
And that man on that island, remember, he had his milk, and that beast
that was disgusting.
that had 4 udder
whatever
/ breasts, he drank milk from. So they're imprinting you.
It was kind of like green.
I don't know what it was, but they're imprinting you. Because like I said, I breastfed my children, and there was never a problem. So now that the fact they're making it into supposedly a problem, they're imprinting you with certain things. So anyway, just don't get involved with that. Do what you're supposed to do. Anyway, and then I have another issue on transspeciesism. Now, we talked about speciesism. Now, this is transspeciesism. Okay, so this is a trans woman, which means the man, has spent over $50,000 US to transform herself into a dragon. This woman / man from Brunei, Texas, named Eva Tiamat Medusa, obviously a made-up name.
That's like a nice name, yeah.
Claims she's the most modified transgender in the world.
Right.
She wants to be a dragon, not just look like one. She used to be a vice president of a bank. She quit that.
Explains it.
Then she got scales. Then she had her nose redone. Now this is the thing.
Okay.
What surgeon, what doctor would do this? She had her ears removed.
Who would do that?
She had her ears removed.
That has to be illegal. To remove organs and parts that are fine. That
are functional. The whites of her eyes stained green, which to me that practically sounds illegal because that could really affect you. Everything.
Yeah.
Sounds very bad. Anyway, now this is the story. It gets even more unique. This woman, Eva, which Eve, Adam and Eve,
right?
Okay, was abandoned by her parents when she was 5 years old.
And hence the issue.
And programming and mind control. She says she had a born again experience when a Western diamond rattlesnake took her under its wing.
They don't have wings.
Then, before identifying as a dragon, she was a man diagnosed with HIV, but he didn't want to die as a human.
Right.
So then she goes on to say that I have two mothers. One is my original birth mother, and my second birth is to my reptilian parents.
Well, that makes sense.
Which are rattlesnakes.
Mm-hmm.
And so she says she does not identify as a human anymore, and so she is trans species.
So she's transgender, trans species.
Well, actually, she goes even further. She says there's a lot of misunderstanding about what it means to be a transsexual. And then further than that, she says this, I'm introducing the idea of transspeciesism.
No, she's not.
I
I've heard of it
consider
before.
myself not just to be human anymore, I'm human and reptilian.
Yes, she is.
And we are all human and reptilian.
That's right, not news, lady.
And alien. If
or
you
man,
read,
or whatever you are.
Where's the book?
Dragon.
There we go. Blue Blood, True Blood, if you want to know the origins
Mm-hmm.
of humanity, as well as true world history.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say throw in Stuart Says, because this has also got some interesting information that ties
Mm-hmm.
in with all of that. So those are good books to read. All right, so continuing of mind control and programming, and the mind control and programming books that help you get out of it. True Reality of Sexuality, 13 Cubed. Hyperspace Helper has basic deprogramming exercises in it that you do yourself. Twins. I've been telling you about twins in the news. Well, here are two twins that were debilitated by OCD. OCD is usually a result of programming. Okay? Usually. Obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, they were found fatally shot, these twins, in a car near a popular Colorado tourist attraction in what may have been a suicide pact.
I think so.
Now, Sarah and Amanda Eldridge, 33.
End of a series of cycles.
And also April is a 33 number. believe we talked about that. Yep, it's clear frequency, right? So the twin sisters made headlines in 2015. Listen to this. After becoming the first people ever to receive deep brain stimulation surgery typically performed on patients with Parkinson's disease. This was to cure their OCD. So they've had this, and after they had the surgery, they said that they felt so much better, and that they said we can leave the house, we have friends, we go to concerts, we do things, we have a future. This is what Amanda was quoted as saying. Now, apparently, before they had the surgery, the reason supposedly they would take 10-hour showers, they would wash
10 hours.
Yeah.
How could you?
OCD, wash their hands until they were raw. So they were just totally debilitated. And that's usually, as I said, a result of programming. But now listen to this. They were contemplating suicide since the age of 13. So 13 is another.
And 33.
13 and 33. So these, unfortunately, these twins are gone.
They didn't get the help they needed.
No, but they were definitely experimented on. All right, now I've been talking to you a lot about white privilege. Now we have a new term out there. It's called Christian privilege. Okay, all kinds of things going on. This now is at George Washington University, a diversity workshop. This probably happened by the time you get this podcast. We're hosted a training session for students and faculty that teaches that Christians, especially white Christians, receive merited perks from institutions and systems all across our country. The workshop was titled Christian Privilege, but our founding fathers were all Christians, right? This was hosted by George Washington University's Multicultural Student Services Center and teaches that Christians enjoy a privileged, easier life than their non-Christian counterparts, and that Christians possess built-in advantages. So this is now, I guess versus Islam and Muslim and Jewish and everything else under the sun now. This is one of 15 free training opportunities offered through the center. And the others focus on heterosexual privilege, cisgender privilege. That means if you're you identify, I guess, as a male and identify, like with our birth gender, which is stupid, able-bodied privilege, socioeconomic privilege, and unconscious bias, and more, and guess what else? White privilege. So, all that's interesting to me. And then here we go with, and I've told you about this before, the sex bot thing. Because the sex bot thing is a growing trend, obviously. And so when there's new things out, I'm going to let you know what's happening, because I believe we're talking about on my blog this month about isolation programming. Here's a perfect way to isolate you from people. So anyway, there's a man and a wife, a man and a woman. They're a married couple in Barcelona, Spain, who creates sex bots. He likes to call himself the Robin Hood of sex, because his mission, he feels, is to bring affordable AI sex dolls to everybody. Well, BBC is putting on a new documentary, and this was interesting because the host is a cyborg named James Young. Now, why do they call him a cyborg? Because apparently, unfortunately, they don't say how, he lost a limb, an arm. He was replaced it with a bionic arm, so now they call him a cyborg. Several times they referred to him as that. And so he said that he was obsessed with technology since he lost the arm, has now the bionic arm, and so he's now, BBC is using him, I'm going to literally using him, to delve into the world of sex robots. And he says the development of the sex robot industry is unstoppable. Now what makes this particularly interesting is because they're always telling you what they're going to do with it, what they're not going to do with it. Now they want to put them into old people's homes.
Sex bots?
Yes. Like into nursing homes and things like that. And they said the residents can even share them because the dolls are hygienic and can be washed.
So what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. Anyway, I just think, it gets crazier and crazier, but it's all about isolation, in my opinion. And then a little bit more on the transgender, because this was also interesting. This has to do with Iowa State and 4-H. Now, it says that that there is a guideline that is about to be forced on 4-H children as young as 5 throughout the state of Iowa. And this, I want you to listen to this policy, because this is setting a precedent for many people in many ways, even without parental consent. You just have to hear this. This Iowa's inclusion policy. And it uses such terms as polysexual and intersex. This is for children as young as 5. That mandates that 4-H, including all paid and volunteer personnel as well as youth members, will use pronouns and names consistent with a transgender or intersex individual's gender identity. Now, this means that I just have to read this because it's just so bizarre. It says both youth members and adult leaders may assert a gender identity that differs from previous representation. This means that a biological male can claim he's female, and a biological female can claim she's a male.
Of course, and I could be a cat.
But listen to this. This is 4-H. They do not need to be supported by medical diagnosis or legal identification documents. Once the person asserts whatever gender they identify with, from overnight housing to pronoun usage, this must be met. Now, I want you to understand 4-H is also supported by universities and by, I can't think of what it's called, but it's an agricultural program that helps farmers. I can't think of it at the moment. I didn't obviously get it here, but it basically goes back to government control. Now, not only this, but accommodation requirements apply to restrooms, locker rooms, overnight lodging, athletic teams, all of which individuals must be allowed access based on their chosen gender identity. It says, these accommodations must be met even if others experience discomfort. Okay? Even in circumstances when the youth member's family or guardian raise objections or concerns over their child's decision to request such transgender accommodation. This is taking the right away from the family, the parents, the legal guardians, and they're saying if this child, could be as young as 5 years old, it's a boy wants to be a girl, they have to allow it.
So if you have a daughter who's going to a 4-H camp, and some teenage boy decides he's a girl that day, then they can put that boy in with your daughter.
Yes.
And she just has to accept that.
Yes.
That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
And if the parents don't want their boy in with the girl,
they can't say anything.
They can't object, according to this legal document that the government is putting into place.
Brilliant.
So it says
That's why the country is really progressing.
The Iowa 4-H Bulletin announces this imminent adoption of the controversial transgender policies, invites public comment for the next few days until April 13. But I will tell you, if they've gone to this length, they're not going to consider what you have to say. They're just going to do it. So anyway,
it's a sick planet.
It's a sick society. So if you don't participate, it'll go away. So don't participate. Just let it go. I want to remind you, the White Owl Legends, an archetypal story of creation, is a fascinating thing that you can throw in with any of your book orders. Our daily affirmation book for self-change. There's, as you can see, tons of affirmations. You have an issue, I don't care what it is. You close your eyes, you open it up, you point your finger, and you're going to find some help here that will help you. You want to know universal law? This is what we have taught. I have taught myself for almost I guess maybe over, I have
You're
to
over
say.
100 years old.
Yeah, for decades. So universal law. And then health and healing, hyperspace plus, healing archetypes and symbols. These are the most amazing books. This one makes a really nice companion with it as well, the Hyperspace Helper. And I'd like to announce my newest fluff book, which is the Archetype books. I have one more left that should be up before the end of May.
And you had a little picture of me there.
Yeah, that's it. But this one's really fascinating. So we have now 3 in the series printed: archetypes, chakras, auras. And the last one to come out is protection. So these will be out imminently.
Wonderful. That's really great.
Yeah.
I also would like to thank everybody who sent their best wishes and condolences in for the passing of our Siberian Husky Natasha. It was very emotional and dramatic for us. So thank you for your messages. I appreciate it.
It was very unexpected. I'm grateful she went peacefully in her sleep. And many of you have seen her on her videos and podcasts and on her Facebook posts.
She was one of a kind. There'll never be another.
Yes, and that left a very empty space in our hearts and our home for now. So we are in mourning.
And so next month, end of next month, Janet and I again will be in Istanbul to do a live television show and a lecture. And then we will be on our way to Italy, to the northern Piemonte area on the border of France and Switzerland.
Waldenchen, like the ancient trails of the Waldensians, Valdese, Vaudois.
And we will at the very end have a side trip into Switzerland, into the town of Thun, which is, according to the KGB, where my family developed in 80 AD.
Is it Thun or Thun?
Thun.
Thun, that's what I
Yes.
thought, because that's the same sound as my cousin's last name, Thun.
And then, of course, we have the September Spectacular coming up and
Yes.
the January Intensive. And people are already signing up for this.
For both of them.
And I always say that it's spectacular and wonderful, but really, the information, I'm going through 3,000 pages of ancient translated information that I've never taught this before. And it's gonna
Very
be something.
fascinating, yes. And I want to remind before you go too far, is we do have one space left on our
Just
Italian
that one
trip.
space.
So, and this closes the 30th of April. So if you're planning on coming, please let us know at ASAP. We don't want to give your seat away to that one person. It's all we have left.
And we do have new books coming out. Of course, Hyper Truths, my new television show, and the doc that I mentioned to you earlier is coming out and being processed. And that is coming under the umbrella of our new production company, which we'll be announcing in the very near future. And we have many surprises coming up for you. Even we will be surprised.
Yes, because we don't know all of them yet.
We don't know what
They're out there
will happen.
manifesting, coming in.
Yes.
But anyway, we want to thank you again. I will thank those of you who respectfully comment on our podcasts. And I want to thank all of you who support our research by purchasing our books, making donations on our PayPal account, using our services, getting a membership, commenting, and sharing our YouTube videos, sharing our Facebook pages. All those things help to get out in hyperspace Oversoul Truths, because a lot of people do not want to know, and those who do, it's very challenging them for finding information that we have to share. It's not out there anywhere else in the world.
Right. So thank you very much. Hopefully by next week it'll go above freezing.
Maybe.
And we'll actually have some kind of a spring weather.
Who knows? Well, this is mid-spring for Michigan.
Yeah, we have frost until June 1st.
Yes.
So
anyway, we look forward to seeing you somewhere in the world. We appreciate, again, all of you. And thank you so much for liking all of our work.
and especially liking me.
Yeah, and especially those of you who like Stuart.
Thank you.
Bye.
I am the Bye for now. Bye.
Bye.